Hey everyone, today I'm taking a look at Stroganov, which is a 1 to 4 player Euro strategy board game designed by Andreas Steading and published by Game Brewer. This one takes around 90 minutes to play on average. Before I get into the video, I want to give a shout out to the show sponsor, Kienda.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer here in the UK, and if you use my discount code in the show notes, you can get 5% off your first order. Okay, so the main board for Stroganov is going to look like this, and at first this might look somewhat intimidating, but it's not too bad if you break things down. So at the top, going across here, is the scoring track, and below that we have the round structure. So you're going to be playing 4 rounds, each represented by a different season, and the winter phase is going to be somewhat of an admin phase, and the player with the most points by the final winter is going to be the winner. You've got a market here, which you can kind of exchange these different furs, and these furs are, I suppose, one of the main currencies in the game, and they range from 2 all the way up to these big grizzly bears here with a value 8. And the rest of the symbology at the top here is mainly just depicting the different actions and the turn structure of the game. So it's just a bit of a memoir. Here we have a song track which you can climb throughout the game by collecting these loot symbols here, and at certain points, or if you reach the top of the track, you can spend these points in order to claim these bonuses, which we'll talk on a bit later. And depending on the player count, there might be more or fewer of these bonuses available to you, just to restrict the options you have. And I suppose the main part of the board here is this kind of track which is broken down into these 5 different regions, and within these regions you've got these tiles which have been semi-randomly distributed out on the board, and within those tiles you have these furs as well, which have been drawn out at random from the bag here. But they have been placed in order, so they always range from lowest to highest. And you can see here, you can end up acquiring these tiles and getting the rewards on the bottom. But again, we'll talk on that shortly. And below all these modular tiles, you have the main parts here on the main kind of sections of this track, where you have these cards, you have these yurt tiles, and you also have these town tiles. Now these two here are kind of exchangeable throughout the game as they're claimed and refreshed. However, these town tiles are going to be a permanent fixture. Each player is also going to have their personal player board, which is essentially another track that you're trying to climb throughout the game by trading in these furs. And this track is going to offer you end-game victory points if you climb all the way to the bottom, or depending on how far you climb. And it's also going to give you little checkpoints along the way to get these other bonuses. Additional resources include these horses, which come in these individual, or I believe these count as 3 horse tokens, and we'll touch on what they do a bit later. You're going to have coins, and you're also going to have these outpost tokens. You're going to start with 1 available to you, but you are going to have the option to unlock more of them as the game goes on. Additionally, at the start of the game, you are going to be distributed 1 of these objective cards, just to give you a starting point on something to work towards. Okay, so let's talk about how the game actually works. So the first thing you're going to do on your turn is you're going to move your Cossack up to 2 spaces for free. So I could go like this, and that wouldn't cost me anything. However, if I want to travel further, which there is a benefit to do so, because if you travel furthest at the end of the year, you're going to get some free movement on the song track up there. But yeah, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to move up to 2 spaces, and if you want to move further, you can choose to spend your horse tokens. So for an additional movement, you just have to spend 1 horse, which will mean you can move up to 3 spaces, or you can spend an additional 3 horses to go to that 4th space, or if you spend a massive 6 horses, you can go all the way up to 5 spaces. Once you've settled on where you want to move to, you're going to have the option to take a basic action. And these are the 5 basic actions you can take. You can either take a coin from the supply, you can move your Cossack one or 2 spaces in either direction, so you can actually end up moving back on yourself if you choose to do that. You can do this one here, which is to take 4 horses from the supply. You can do a hunt action, which is where you take these furs. So the top one is always going to be just a basic action to take that one. However, if you want to get the ones or access to the furs below it, like say I really wanted this bear here, for each horse I spend, I can actually climb down that track. So if I could say you wanted this 8, I could spend 2 horses and get access to this bear. Now, whenever you collect a bear, you're also going to move 2 up on the song track. Also, when you do that hunt action, you can actually optionally spend an additional coin, and when you do that, you can take another fur And the final basic action you can take is to do this one here. And when you do this action, you're actually going to have to trade in a fur matching this symbol here. So at the beginning of the game, all these different furs are distributed on the different regions and put in numerical order, at least for the basic game, but you can optionally change that later. But there's always going to be one that's left out and put on this action here. And when you trade in that type, so i.e. the fox fur, you can take 2 of these actions. So you can either take a coin, you can go 2 up the song track, you can move your Cossack even more, or you can take 3 horses. So once you've moved and taken your basic action, you have the option to either take another basic action, or you can take a main action. And the main actions are generally more tied or anchored to the region that your Cossack is in, or where you've built an outpost, because that is actually going to be one of the options you can make, is to establish one of these outposts. So let's talk about what these main actions are. So the first thing that you can do is you can use the action of the town that's cemented on that region. So this one would be to take one of these special tiles here, which will act as additional income when it comes to the winter phase. So for each one of these, you get an additional horse, obviously, which is a great currency to have. Of course, this is just going to give you more horses. You can use the yurt action here, which this one in particular lets you take 3 of those tokens and go up 1 on the song track. However, when you take one of these yurt actions, they do actually get discarded from the board. So there is a kind of an urgency to get to those if you want to do that. Or you can take one of these special Tsarkars here. And these are going to give you something to aim towards. So you can see this one in particular wants you to have 4 of these level 2 furs. And if you have that and you trade in one of them, because you can see it's got that red outline there, you are not only going to get 2 points, but you're also going to add something to your engine. So this one here means that when it comes to the winter phase, I can take a fur from the bag. And the final main action you can take is to claim one of these actual tiles. Now, when you do that, you have to spend 2 furs matching the region you're in. So this would be 2 level 2s, and there's going to be an additional fur of that type for each fur remaining on the main tile. So what that means is that if there's still fur here, it's going to be much more expensive, whereas if this has been completely depleted, it's only going to go back to that value 2. So it's going to be a lot more affordable if you do it once it's been ravaged by all the other players. Now, if you do end up buying them, you are going to get the victory conditions at the bottom there. So this one's going to be, you get 2 victory points, take one of these furs from the marketplace there and take a coin. And there's an additional incentive to collect these tiles, because you can see here that each of them has a symbol on them, I think representing the different seasons. And for each set of 3 or 4, you're going to get an amount of points. I think it's 3 points for a set of 3 and 4 points for a set of 4 unique symbols. So once you've moved your Cossack, you've taken your basic action, you've taken your main action, and you actually get the option to take another action. However, this one is going to cost you. It's going to cost you resources. Either it's going to cost you one of the matching symbols here. So it's going to, in this example, it's going to cost me another 2 fur to take another main action. Or if you want to take a basic action, you can just discard any fur at all. There's also some auxiliary actions that you can take any time during your turn without limitations. So you can spend 5 horses to either take a fur from the market or take them from the bag, again drawing 2 and keeping one of them. You can choose to complete one of your Tsar cards here, which we touched on already, so it's not going to, again, spend any time to do that. And you've also got these ones here where you can exchange a fur and a horse in order to exchange it for a lower valued fur, or you can spend any 2 furs to exchange it from one from the market. And once you finish your turn, you're going to lie your Cossack down just to show that you're finished, and it's going to go to the next player, who can do the same thing, moving how far they want, taking their basic actions and main actions. However, in the next round, the person who is furthest along will go first. So you are going to play 3 rounds of that until you get to a winter phase. And the winter phase, you are going to follow this little sequence here where you're going to take an income of 2 horses plus an additional horse for each one of these tokens that you've acquired. Then you're going to activate any winter abilities that you've acquired through these Tsar cards here, to get you additional income, such as going up the track or taking furs from the bag or market. It can be all kind of things. And then the person who's traveled the furthest along the track here, is going to get an additional 2 movements up the scoring track. The second place is going to go up 1, and then whoever's moved the furthest is going to get to claim one of these bonus tiles. So they are going to, let's say the yellow player wanted this one here. They're going to go spend the 3 song points, go 1, 2, 3, so that should be on the same spot as the blue player there, and take the corresponding reward, which in this case is going to be 5 horses. And then the blue player is going to do the same, where they can spend 2 song points, like so. That one will be back there, and take a point. And once all that's been completed, you're going to go into a bit of an admin step when you're going to start replenishing things on the board, such as replenishing the song tiles ready for the next round. Any tiles that have been removed from the game are going to get refilled in by new ones by sliding all the existing ones along and refilling them from this side with the stack here. Always the one on the end is going to have one of these tiger tokens, which are actually a wild fur, but if you don't spend them by the end of the game, they're going to be worth 2 points each, so still quite a valuable resource to be had there. Additionally, any spaces that have been created by the SAR cards or the yurt are going to slide along like so. Again, refilling them from the supply for each gap that is created. Now, halfway through the game, the B tiles start to come into play, which start to ramp up the rewards and benefits that you get from them, just to give it a bit of a, a forward trajectory. And you're also going to move your Cossacks back to the starting spot, but keeping them in the order that was from the previous round. And there was one action that I missed from the main actions list there, which is to place these outposts on the board. And when you do that, you are going to have a look at where your Cossack is, and then you're going to place one of these X's on the available slots here. And these slots are going to vary depending on the player count, just to keep the game feeling tight. And you're going to spend the amount of horses depicted on that empty slot. Again, normally you would go from left to right, but again, some of these are going to be filled in by proxy players. And what this means is that later in the game, say I travelled further along the track here, when I get to take my main action, not only do I have the option to take the main action from where my Cossack currently is, but you can also do it to where you have an outpost. So your options are constantly expanding if you have like a strategy that you want to keep going back to. So let's take a look at some of these towns and yurts that are available to the players. So we've already talked about this one here, but we got this this trophy symbol here, which actually lets you climb down your personal board. So this one, again, if you have the available fur here, by spending it from your supply, you can do that and slide this down, and not only are you going to start unlocking victory points for the endgame scoring, but you're also going to get the corresponding bonus, such as climbing up the song track, taking horses, I'm getting to activate a town, I'm getting victory points, and so on. And something I should have also mentioned is that at any time you can actually use these coins to exchange a fur to another fur, so it kind of turns furs wild for any reason you might want to do that. You've got these ones here that let you take furs from the market. This one here lets you climb up the song track and take a new outpost ready to be placed on the board later. Again, taking more income from those tiles there, giving you a big boost up the song track and getting you money, and so on. Okay, so let's share some thoughts on Stroganov. And I have to say, out of almost all games in recent memory, this might be the most difficult game for me to piece my thoughts together about. And that is because there is no kind of distinctive hook or mechanism that makes Stroganov stand out. And I don't mean that negatively at all. What I mean by that is that this really is a bunch of smaller systems patched together to make the finished article. And as I said, I don't mean that negatively, but it does mean that the game is quite difficult to almost pitch to other players and to give somebody or somebody who's not played it before an obvious approach on what to go for. I suppose if anything, you could say at least aim towards collecting one of the different types of tiles here, because that is going to give you a healthy amount of points, but also maybe try to climb down as far as you can along this track. But everything else, you almost have to work out as you go. And this is definitely one of those games where things will start to click into place the more you play it. Now, I must admit, something that I didn't like about this game is the way that the round structure is broken down. I do find it somewhat confusing, at least explaining it to other players. The first part, yeah, perfectly simple. Move 1 to 2 spaces or spend horses to go further. Perfectly fine. The second part, take a basic action, and then those basic actions are one of 5 actions, and one of those five actions you can take another kind of follow action by spending another coin, and one of those 5 actions is also to take another 2 actions if you match one of these. However, if you don't have that matching fur, you can also spend a coin to make that fur wild to do that in the first place. So if that's not confusing already, then you go into the main action part. And the main action, you can actually forsake the main action to take a basic action, and then you can take another action after that by spending a matching fur of the region you're in to take another main action, or you can take another common action by disposing of any fur. So it is actually quite a confusing thing to break down and to explain to somebody where, for me, the best games are ones where, you do this on your turn, or you get one of these 4 options and that's it. So I'm not quite convinced that the actual user interface or the way you do actions in this game is the best thing for it. Now, that being said, as the game goes on, you do actually have some quite cool scope to pull off some pretty big moves, especially as you acquire more and more of these horses to give you flexibility. And something I definitely learned is that these horses, you need to be prepared to spend them. They're not as, as scarce of a resource as you might think at first. I was very reluctant to spend them. I wanted to hold on to them to the best time, where I did quickly learn that, if you have them, spend them to capitalize on it now. But as I said, there are some good options here, because if you want to travel really far, you can by having those horses. You have some good flexibility in changing things from the market. The more and more you put outposts out, you can start to line moves up as well. And of course, if you have money, you can start turning things to wild. And you can build up a little bit of an engine by acquiring more and more of these cards. And it's also quite a cool touch that you don't actually have to spend most of these furs when you do them. So just acquiring them is enough, because I think it would have been a bit too stalling if you had to spend them each time. I really do enjoy this outpost mechanism, because again, you are normally restricted to the region that you're in order to take those main actions. But if you have spent that effort to put those outposts down, then you are going to be anchored to a certain action. And if you are, again, fully focused on doing something, like say I really wanted to climb down on this track here, and if I've got my outpost there, then I'm always going to have the option to go back there, meaning that I can venture further, start collecting all the furs that I need to climb further down on my track here, and that can tie together and synergize with each other pretty damn well. And also something I didn't mention is that the more outposts you get down on the board, the more points you get at the end. So another benefit for doing that, and it makes the arc of the game feel a bit more alive, because you are doing more or having more options as the game goes on. There's also a pretty cool thread of tension when it comes to player interaction, because you have to be quite careful with the opportunities you leave to other players. Like, for example, if somebody completely ravaged a tile by spending all their actions to take all the furs, then it's going to be quite easy for somebody to sweep in after you and only spend those couple of furs in order to claim the tile for themselves, which will not only give you these bonuses, but again, potentially those endgame bonuses as well. However, you might be willing to spend a bit more because that's the exact tile that you want, but it's going to cost you more furs because there is still furs remaining on it. So again, it has that cool push and pull of wanting to deplete them, but not deplete them too much so it invites other people to steal them from you, but being prepared to know what you're willing to pay for that specific tile. And something else I briefly wanted to touch on, but not make a big issue of, is that it does often feel like, at least to me personally, that you are jumping through quite a few hoops in order to get little almost payoff for doing so. Because this is generally a low scoring game, you're getting 2 points here or there, and maybe a few more if you claim one of these tiles. But again, you're not getting those big bursts of points, which I tend to generally enjoy more. Now, again, I know this is probably more psychological than anything, but it does feel like you are doing a lot of work to get little in return. The game does take around 90 minutes to play, which I feel is perfectly fine for the game. Not for a second did I feel this game outstayed its welcome, and I was engaged from start to finish. I think, for the first maybe half of your first game, you are just kind of trying to figure things out, try to understand how you can get the most from the systems here. The replayability for Stroganov is also fairly decent, because the tiles are going to come out in different orders each time. Sometimes you're not even going to see all the tiles. You've got a bunch of the different cards there. You've got a bunch of the yurt tiles and the song tiles. And something I didn't mention is that not only do you have the matching player boards where everyone can play from the same board, each player also has the option to play with the variable side, which means you have your own little strengths and weaknesses. Okay, so let's talk about the production for Stroganov. Now, I do have the deluxe version here, and I have not seen the standard retail version, so I can't compare the two. But I think the main difference between them is that the deluxe version comes with these rather nice and well-cut little horse meeples. These are very nice to play with, and I like them a lot. So yeah, that's nice that you can have these. It's a shame that the retail version doesn't come with them, because I think playing with standard tokens isn't nearly as nice. Let's talk about the artwork. So I think the artwork in this game is fantastic, very atmospheric, has this like hyper realistic look to it. Look at the water here. I mean, the actual artwork in this game is stunning, really nice to look at when it's on the table, and I think it's top notch. Even the actual the character artwork looks fantastic as well. Definitely my style of art. Now, something that the Game Brewer have received a lot of criticism for is the physical production of the game, and I might even have to say that that is being blown a little bit out of proportion here. While yes, I can completely accept that maybe people were expecting a more lavish, luxury, deluxe product here, and this certainly is not that, but it is more than adequate. The cardboard stock is fine at best, but it does still feel relatively strong. It's not going to wear out on you or anything like that, and I'm not sure if a big part of that is the way that these cards, the tokens in that are cut. They do hold together quite well, and they do feel somewhat robust. Okay, so let's share some final thoughts on Stroganov, which I have to say I am pleasantly surprised by, because there is some good decisions to be had here, some cool combos, some big moves you can pull off, and even a small degree of engine building when it comes to acquiring these cards. And you do have to think ahead and plan and be quite savvy if you want to do well at this game, which is all stuff I love. And saying I'm pleasantly surprised with this game is probably a bit of a disservice to a great designer like Andreas Steading, because he has made some of the best games ever to exist. However, this one does feel definitely apart from those other games, because it is undoubtedly more disjointed. It's definitely a mishmash of mechanisms, and it doesn't have that harmonious hook or something to really grab your attention to define the game for me. So most of the time now, if I want to get a 90 to 120 minute game to the table, I'm probably going to want to play something for a reason. I want to play this game because of this mechanism. With Stroganov, I do kind of struggle to find its identity. Do I want to get this game to the table because of what? Because I want to trade furs for other furs. It's not even like the time track system is that strong. It's all just, again, small parts to make an overall product that is actually pretty good and it works well. So I think if you are willing to put that extra effort in and deal with something that isn't as refined or as sophisticated as some of those other designs, there is still enjoyment to be had here. But for me personally, am I going to request to play Stroganov and get it back to the table often? Absolutely not. It's just not going to be the case, because while there's nothing wrong with the game and I did enjoy my time with it, there's also nothing terribly special about it either. So yeah, for that reason, it's just not going to stand out amongst the pack and demand 90 minutes of my time, unfortunately. Game time is limited, and this is just like another one of those games where it's another solid Euro, but in a sea of great ones.